The Joe Rogan Strip Show, Part 2. Hope you're ready. I'm not. I spent hours reviewing Joe's podcast 1543 featuring Brian Muraresku and Graham Hancock. 2.5 hours. Took notes, prepared slides, some tabs. All right, I'm as ready as I'll ever be. I will focus on that one podcast as usual, just one will do. Um, it featured, as I mentioned, two gentlemen. The subject, or rather the argument of that podcast, is that early Christianity and pre-Christian cultures, and even lost cultures, used psychedelics to access otherwise inaccessible and good states of consciousness that we need and that our crazy governments bar us from accessing. The supposedly scientific evidence for the use of psychedelics in antiquity was provided by Brian, who sadly neglected to share scientific documents and photos or footage of lab scientists testing ancient bowls, vases, chalices, etc., for evidence of psychedelic use. I assume this evidence is in his book, The Key to Immortality, The Secret History of the Religion with No Name. He spent 12 years writing it, which is quite a claim for a book whose secret purpose is very simple, nothing more than to persuade us that psychedelics have a long history and are sacred, which arguably implies that we should use them. And I suppose that is the only reason he has so much support from the Vatican, from Versailles. Perhaps he had special access, and professors here and there, and Joe Rogan. Don't get me wrong, Brian is a consummate scholar. He never pauses between sentences and words, and he memorized foreign languages, quotations from the classics, and from other scholars, not to mention information from his personal research. Perhaps I am his antithesis. I memorize very badly. And during my 30 years of reading the classics and scriptures, I never memorized what I read, and I didn't respect them either, because I saw no wisdom in any of them. Graham Hancock needs no introduction. His main contribution to this podcast, Joe's podcast, was to insist that psychedelics are beneficial, necessary, and that their use is unjustly suppressed by our maniacal governments. But enough of this preamble. Let's begin. I shall share a little, some bits and pieces of the podcast. Obviously, not the entire 2.5 hours. There we go. Ready or not.
So before Jerusalem, before Rome, before Mecca, there was Eleusis, and for some reason we're not taught about this in our high school mythology or Western Sid classes.
There was Eleusis, um, something in ancient Greece, a cult that reputedly used um, psychedelics to access spiritual dimensions. Um, really, a lost cult. The word Eleusis is curious. It is the name of a town in Greece, I believe, but that proves nothing because the word Eleusis, please keep in mind, it sounds a lot like illusion, Eleusis. Indeed. Could that be a coincidence? Or is someone playing with our languages, the controllers of the world? Are they mocking us? Eleusis. Have your own. Get your illusions here at Eleusis. Let's continue to, well, quite soon, Graham will speak about death, topic he seems to know quite well.
No, there isn't much. I mean, I say Eleusis is like the Fight Club of the ancient world. The first rule about Eleusis is you don't talk about Eleusis. All we have is this fragmentary testimony, again, from Plato, Pindar, Sophocles, and others. They do talk about a vision that's almost universal, and they almost universally talk about this once in a lifetime transformative event where they become initiates. And only they properly have life after death. Because at the time, the Greeks didn't really look forward to the afterlife. In fact, there what
Plato and others, they needed some sort of psycho, psychopathy. What's the right word here? Yeah, drugs. Well, that would explain their twisted visions and their twisted texts. In my mind, um, I would hesitate to attempt defending anything written by Plato. Mostly it's Babylon.
was no afterlife. You just disappear into Hades to do God knows what. But people walk away from Eleusis saying that they found salvation. And we don't know why or how. We know this potion is involved. We know they make this pilgrimage 13 miles from Athens to Eleusis to drink this potion. We know they prepare for months, if not years, before it, and they're forever changed afterwards. But we have very little hard data to actually look into it. And so in 1978, this trio of renegades, Gordon Wasson, Albert Hoffman, who discovered LSD, and Carl Ruck, who was then the chair of the classics department at Boston University, they put out this book, The Road to Eleusis, claiming they'd found the secret after 2,000 years. What they claimed is that this
Well, we're getting there. 13 miles or kilometers from Athens. It's an interesting number. As is the number on Brian's shirt, 1980. Could be reduced to the number 18 or three sixes.
ocean was actually spiked with ergot, which is that naturally occurring fungus from which you can synthesize LSD. And in fact, it's how he synthesized LSD by accident in 19.
Well, thank goodness for agriculture and ergot. Um, let's review something. People losing their fear of death. I think it's mentioned again at 1222.
From Eleusis and many other ancient accounts is the way that people come back having lost their fear of death, that they don't regard death as the end anymore. It's just another stage on the journey, just the beginning of the next great adventure.
How curious. Fear of death. You need drugs to overcome that. Psychedelics. Amazing. This is more magical thinking. Granted, Hancock and Rogan admit that psychedelic experiences are not easy and can be terrifying. But they did not make clear the connection between confronting death and psychedelic use. Do you hallucinate your own death? Someone else's death? Death in the abstract? Nor did they explain how psychedelic use can involve mental work. I, on the other hand, offer a protocol that involves real work. For example, we should meditate on death, the abstract death, and similar unpleasant ideas. until we master them. And we should work at living well so that we don't fear the day when a wasted, angry, stressed out, and unfulfilled life must end. How can we live well? Uh, Take psychedelics. And no. Please consult the laws of life. I'm kind of serious. The document is in each of my books. Or wait for it until I do a special show about the laws of life revealed to me by entities, no, by an energy with no name. I guess that will do. Let's skip ahead to another interesting statement at 1325.
You see, a lot of the critics will say that it's some kind of natural human tendency that we don't want to die, and that we're afraid of death, and that religions provide us with some sort of solace, some sort of feeling of security. But
That is obviously true, but Graham wishes to disagree.
I think that washes at all. I think what's striking about the psychedelics is it's a direct experience that the person has. They have an experience. It's not a teaching. It's not something that they're told about. It's not a scripture that they read. It's an experience that they have.
Well, that's curious. What, your experience, your own death? Is that what happens? I think that would be the end of the popularity of psychedelics. Um, on the other hand, he's insisting that the experience is not a teaching, but somewhat later in this podcast, he will insist that psychedelic experience conveys morality somehow, teaches, should I use that word, love and care for others. I've yet to see much evidence of that. With those I know indulge. So, oh well, there should be a good study on it one day. Let's skip ahead again to another interesting statement, I believe, again by Graham at 1548. Oh boy, this is tough, 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 tough. This'll do.
The way that the experiences would utterly change and transform my life. And I can understand from a level of personal experience why psychedelics do lie at the root, I think, of all the world's religions.
Wow. Psychedelics lie at the root of all religions. No pun on the word lie intended. That's an enormous claim. While religious people are busy prohibiting psychedelics, and the prohibitions are often explicitly part of their religion, as it is for Muslims, for example. How couldn't psychedelics be at the root of Islam? Well, I don't doubt that some kind of psycho something, not psychedelics, psycho something is responsible for our religions. Psychedelics? Well, um, and if they were, here's, the false reasoning again. Graham Hancock is assuming there's something good, fundamentally good about all religions. Therefore, by associating psychedelics with religions, the root of religions, he wishes for us to assume that psychedelics are good. Or to infer, to conclude, wow, well, he ain't preaching to the choir. I'm not convinced that religions are good. That should be obvious by now. Where is next? 1650. We've got another interesting statement again by Graham. 1650. Yes. Come on.
But we're not way more intense than Narnia.
It's just Narnia, and you're in a place where entities are actually communicating with you and speaking to you.
You're in Narnia. It's a children's story. Oh, how appropriate, really. You've become a child stuck in a closet, maybe abducted by adults within that closet world. Yes. The closeteers. They'll steal you into their imaginary world. Um, yeah, he has more.
We're teaching to you. I mean, this is another aspect of psychedelics, is the moral aspect of psychedelics. Critics and enemies of psychedelics want to associate them with some kind of immorality, but actually anybody who's worked extensively with psychedelics will know that they contain moral teachings, whether it's the...
He used the word teachings, which he just insisted is not what psychedelics do. In just 10 minutes earlier. Caught you, caught you, caught you.
Shrooms or whether it's LSD, they cause us to examine our own behavior, our own impact upon others, to question our unkindness to others, and to give us at least the push to begin to be better people and more nurturing and more caring people for others. So this strong moral element in psychedelics, again, is totally ignored by the critics who just want to demonize these substances for reasons that I think are rather sinister, actually.
Mm. Who is being sinister here, please? I think the Nazis reputedly injected psychedelics into captured enemies and suspects to help make them answer questions honestly. Truth serum. Perhaps that worked. Perhaps that worked. But honesty alone is not wisdom or even morality. A thief can be very honest about his reasons for stealing and have no shame about it. Yes, let's skip ahead again. We will have an interesting reference to pop culture. And I wouldn't know anything about Willy Wonka except I sometimes resort to using Roald Dahl's book Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with my students. It's so difficult to find books worthy of our children. I don't try so hard anymore. I just try to teach critical reading skills.
That, much like the ancients, these experiences are not, it's not wise to use them recreationally. I mean, you can if you want. I mean, many people have, and then inadvertently benefited from them greatly. But I think they're very profound, and I think they should be treated like, almost like you've got a Willy Wonka golden ticket to go meet God.
Oh, sorry, that was not Graham's illusion. It was Joe's. Joe is aware of pop culture, obviously. It's a most curious comparison, using Willy Wonka golden ticket as a metaphor for permission to see God and as a metaphor for, as a symbol for psychedelics. Yeah, smoke that Willy Wonka ticket. Well, if God is Willy Wonka, well, maybe that will appeal to people, that comparison. And heaven would be a chocolate factory. Well, you get the sense that these people are jokers sometimes. Jokers, indeed. Not my favorite kind of jokers, but jokers of some sort.
Because that's what it seems like. It seems like it's happened.
What's the ancients?
Should be treated with respect.
Yeah.
Should be treated with respect and with reverence, because of this sense that we're passing through a doorway into a seamlessly convincing parallel reality, and the possibility that that isn't just a concoction of our brains, that the brains are simply acting as an interface or a transceiver between us and that other level of reality. And again, you can see the connection with psychedelics and religion here. My view is, and I said this before on your show, Joe, if I were running the world, anybody who wanted to be a president, a prime minister, a head of state of any kind, I think it should be obligatory that they have at least a dozen sessions with a powerful psychedelic. It can be DMT, it can be ayahuasca, it can be LSD, but they got to go through those dozen sessions. They should be guided by experienced practitioners. And at the end of those dozen sessions, I very much doubt if those individuals would be the same individuals who went into the application for the job in the first place.
Wow. Yeah, if only life were that simple. Just take some psychedelics and you'll be transformed into humane, intelligent, creative, loving people. If only. It's the magical thinking.
You could be the same. When you write about all this, how curious are you personally of the experience, and do you plan on having it?
I do, under the conditions that you set. I mean, I think that we're in a period now where everything is about to change. The clinical research is advancing. Rick Doblin is moving to phase 3. You have researchers at Hopkins, NYU, now UCLA.
Researchers at John Hopkins University, New York University, University of UCLA. Oh, he's using those prestigious research institutions as well, he's assuming they're respectable, really. Aren't they the same institutions that recommend vaccinations and many more things that I wouldn't, and teach students to believe instead of to think? Shame on you. Well, let's skip ahead. 26:55. Close enough.
That we've inherited, like democracy and the arts and the sciences, and what we're doing right now, this trialogos, through these microphonos. These are all Greek things and Greek technology that we've accepted as part and parcel of Western civilization. But there was another part to them. And it's a part, again, that is not taught in high school mythology.
Yes, it's psychedelics. That's I missed.
To meet the goddess. It doesn't happen in the daylight. It doesn't happen prancing around. And the Greeks are known for lots of great things that we've inherited, like democracy and the arts and the sciences and what we're doing.
That's credit. Western civilization, of course. It's the root of everything great, and the Greeks are the foundation. Really, the Greeks created democracy? That's a joke. Another joke. The ancient Greeks, if you believe they existed and believe the stories about them and supposedly written by them, they gave us republicanism, not democracy. They gave us elitism, not egalitarianism. Democracy already existed wherever native tribes were not controlled by a matriarch or patriarch. As for Greek arts, mythology, it is cruel and degenerate, as I have demonstrated at length in one of my earlier videos, and an even greater length in my book, Counterfeit Classics. Let's skip ahead again. We got more interesting statements at the 40-minute mark. Ooh,
By Paul's letters are written to Greek-speaking people, right? And why it's interesting to follow this theory, because you have the ancient Greeks speaking Greek in the pagan world, but you also have ancient Greeks speaking Greek in this Christianizing world. And so the people in Corinth is this church not far from Eleusis, by the way. In fact, today it's only an hour west of Eleusis, and one of the earliest churches is there, and Paul is addressing.
he's implying, of course, that the early church 2,000 years ago really existed, and that the early Christians at that time in Corinth possibly made use of the psychedelics available in Eleusis, illusionist.
This early church in Greek. And at the bottom, you can read the English, but he's essentially yelling at them for consuming the wrong kind of Eucharist.
Wrong kind of Eucharist. The Eucharist, by the way, is a little piece of wafer, a little round cracker that symbolizes the body of Jesus. And I suppose the wine is part of the Eucharist. So it symbolizes the blood of Jesus. Well, red wine, a little wafer. What is the wrong kind of Eucharist? Uh, Paul did not speak very clearly. What was the right kind of Eucharist made of? Wine from a special vineyard and flour from a special field? It's not so clear, but we'll have something to chew on in a moment.
Earlier in this chapter, he calls it a cup of demons, and at the end he says, "That's why so many of you are weak and sick, and a number of you have fallen asleep."
A number of you have fallen asleep. Well, this is simply irony. He knows I mean, the author knew he was putting everyone to sleep with his Babylon, nonsense, lies of text void of wisdom. But Brian has something else to share.
And I highlighted the word koimontai there.
Koimontai, highlighted in yellow.
Koimao in Greek, I can tell you for certain, does not mean to fall asleep.
Oh, the translator got it wrong.
Ma'o means to die, because it's the exact word that John's gospel uses about Lazarus. Remember the famous...
Right. The famous, the only man Jesus bothered to resurrect. He was special, Lazarus. And so in the gospel episode about Lazarus, apparently the same word was used to describe or to state that Lazarus was dead and had to be resurrected afterwards. Now, Brian is insisting that because the same word was used in the Lazarus episode, in which a man must be dead, otherwise he couldn't be resurrected, it would be a joke otherwise. I mean, it would be a joke if he had just fallen asleep, as the translator of Corinthians assumed the word meant fallen asleep. So Brian here is conveniently avoiding the funny and maybe satanic reading of the Bible. Perhaps the Bible did mean that Lazarus wasn't really dead. Is that possible? Would the authors be such jokers? Why not? Why not? Well, if on the other hand, if eating the wrong kind of Eucharist killed people, wow, there must be some very strong poison in that little wafer and sip of wine that is shared with Christians. And you'd think there would be a major trial that would follow that, a major investigation, an outrage, a scandal. Nothing of the sort recorded in Corinthians. Nope. Let's see. What's next in my notes? 54:11. Bear with me. You got it.
Which brings us to the Upper Paleolithic, and then we have the whole mystery of rock and cave art all around the world. So Brian is right. We haven't got the analysis that proves that a psychedelic was in that 13,000-year-old beer. But what we do have.
That was, I mean, a 2.5 hour show, and the best Brian could do was provide a story about a chalice or mug that probably contained beer, which maybe contained a psychedelic. One cup on this planet had possibly forensic evidence. Anyhow.
13,000 years ago, and going back much further, 27, 40, 50,000 years ago, is art. And that art really only makes sense as psychedelic art. I mean, where else but in a visionary state do you see an entity that is part human and part animal?
I missed one of his words. I believe he said cave art. Is that right?
50,000 years ago is art.
Well, he is speaking about cave art.
Human and part animal in form, that is part a lion and part a human being. It's not something you see every day. It's not something that you see when you're out hunting game. But seeing these therianthropes, as they're called, is a very common experience in deeply altered states of consciousness. So the art itself speaks to us of artists who had powerful experiences in deeply altered states.
So art featuring semi-human, semi-animal, let's call them humanimals. That proves that psychedelics were involved. Yeah, that's quite an argument. Don't forget, meanwhile, I mean, if we are going to speak of cave art, and mystery art, let's not forget the mystery of dinosaur bones and Darwin's grandmother's Lucy's bones, grandmother Lucy's bones, and all discovered around the same time, all by Western Europeans. Cave art, dinosaur bones, and Lucy's bones, and so on. We should be a little suspicious. Cave art does not prove psychedelics were used in prehistoric times simply because they depict humanimals. We find them in Greek myth, Egyptian gods, and native chiefs apparently used to or still love wearing animal skins and feathery headdresses as if they want to be at least half animal. No, this does not prove they use psychedelics. Instead, it proves that our culture is suffused, permeated with images of dehumanized humans, which is precisely what cannibals love to do to us. They do, in fact, consider us animals, suitable prey. Well, let's skip ahead again. We'll be done fairly soon with this very long production performance. We go ahead to 108:19.
This colonial town looks like. And when you look at it, again, there, I mean, it looks, that could be southern Greece. That could be an island in Greece. That's on the northeast coast of Spain. That's a statue of Asclepius. the Greek god of healing, standing.
A statue of Asclepius, Greek god of healing. Is it now? Well, one moment. Let me get my notes in order. Asclepius. I think Socrates consulted or had a debt owing to Asclepius, and on his deathbed asked one of his friends to pay that debt for him. I think it was the equivalent of a rooster. Asclepius. Well, let me share something new. Something else, a couple of statues, images of statues of Asclepius. Well, here we go. Asclepios. Notice it's spelled with a K, so. And the snake twirling around the stick. There's a word for that. It's similar to the symbol still used by our doctors, our medicidal institution. A snake, of course, and no one questions the snake. They are generally not so medicinal, more likely to kill you. And that is the joke, of course. We choose snakes as a symbol of medicine, or we give you snakes as your symbol of medicine, to speak as one of them. Here we go again, as this time spelled with a C. Now, if the creators of these words knew English, as I insist they did, then this could be a soft C, and we have Asclepius, asleep. Why not? Asleep. And pious. Both mean sleep. Yes, your poisons will put you to sleep in an altered state of consciousness that does not qualify, is not able to think, not well in any case. Let's go back to the show. We're going to discuss triptolimus. I'll let Brian pronounce the name in a moment. At 1:11:45.
The last place I ever expected to find Triptolemus was a farm in Spain. And there it is.
Wow.
So if
Triptolemus.
Ptolemus tells you anything, it tells you that the mysteries went west, when they're not supposed to, by the way. Graham alluded earlier to this incident that happened in Athens in 414 BC. To celebrate the mysteries outside of Eleusis is a sacrilege, a total sacrilege.
They wanted to monopolize the cult. Sounds like Mecca and the mandatory pilgrimage to the Kaaba, the Kaaba of the Muslims with the holy meteorite. Yeah, everyone wants a monopoly, but Brian seems to respect that.
It was called the profanation of the mysteries. And one of Socrates' star disciples, this guy Alcibiades, was caught indulging in the mystery ceremony at home instead of at the temple, and he became the Ed Snowden of the ancient world. He was ostracized. They would have killed him if he didn't run from Athens. So this was serious stuff and sacred stuff. So for them.
Yeah, for them. Well, another share. Let me share a nice photo of Trip Triptolemus. I think I got it that time. Um, where's my share button? Found it. There we go. That's the same image that Brian was sharing, just enlarged it and improved the resolution. And this is supposed to be the dragon chair or chariot. Can't be much of a chariot, has really no wheels, I think. Um, and we do have something resembling a serpent. And I suspect it's not there to revive him, cure him. Nope. This is a chair of death. It's an execution chair. I've spoken about in another video at some length. Anything else curious? Well, I guess I could mention that Elijah of the Bible also went up to heaven in a chariot. So yeah, this takes you to the other world, the next world, the non-world. Curiously, Brian didn't comment on these very short figures here, with an even shorter one possibly here and there. What explains that? They've lost their heads. Probably took too many psychedelics. But what could have stunted them so much? Something I've spoken about elsewhere, perhaps also in my book, The Criminal Bible, and in one of my videos. Let's share one more slide relevant to, well, no, first we got to go back to Joe. Joe, where are you?
Them to be celebrating the mysteries, think about it, kind of makes sense because no one's looking over their shoulder in Spain. If it's going to happen anywhere, maybe it'd be in the hinterlands of the empire.
So this is people that realized that they wanted to continue these rituals and it couldn't do it in Greece anymore. They had to get out.
Right, or these were folks who either couldn't afford or didn't want to go all the way to Eleusis. I mean, you're in Spain. Imagine getting to, you can't get to Eleusis today. Imagine getting to Eleusis 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago. It's really, really difficult.
And this, if I may give a parallel, it's rather like somebody seeking an ayahuasca experience today, and perhaps they can't afford to go all the way to the Amazon rainforest, or it just seems too big a journey. So they're going to look for somewhere nearer to home where they can have that experience. And indeed, ayahuasca is available all over the world now.
Yeah, and that's pretty recently, right? Like within the last couple of decades, it's available all over the world.
Spread rapidly within the last couple of decades. And I think Brian is suggesting that a similar sort of thing was happening in the ancient world with different substance.
The guy's name is so right on the nose, too. Triptolemus.
Ptolemy. Well, Joe actually is on the ball here, or at least halfway.
Never thought about it.
Yeah, tripping, the slang for having it or have a trip, slang for getting high, intoxicated, wasted. How could that be in the name Triptolemus? Coincidence? Maybe. It is English, though, and English in a Greek name? Surely not. Well, as I've argued before, we can forget about studying Hebrew, Sanskrit, Latin, Greek to understand these ancient texts, scriptures, and classics. No, become a master of English and some other Germanic languages. That will get you much further ahead. But let's have a look. a very interesting translation of part of the name of Triptolemus. There it is. See, Lamus is primarily a surname, comes from the Latin word. Oh, well, Latin can be important. Okay. Meaning mud, slime, or fertile soil. So let's review the name. Trip to Limus, trip to the soil. Could that be could that be code or a hint for uh, death, dying? Triptolemus. Yes, as I said, he's on the death chair. Executions were done on chairs and chariots, and Elijah went up, no, not to heaven. He was killed, executed. Um, where do we go next? I think back to Joe's show. And where are you, Joe? There you are.
Until right now, because I don't do DMT.
But I mean, people tripping. I mean, it's just ridiculous that his name is Trip.
It's interesting.
I mean, look at him. He's riding a dragon, and his name is Triptolemus.
And on the next one too, Jamie, you'll see there's another Triptolemus from Capua. This is in Italy. So he did go west.
Wow.
We know he went to Italy, and if he went to Italy, why wouldn't he go to Spain?
He's a real person, and he traveled in this chariot, I suppose. As if chariots are, worthy of transcontinental travel. You only can use them on roads and for shows. They were not for war and not for long distance travel from Greece to Spain. I think a ship would do better.
The style of art. It's completely Greek.
How could it be in Spain? It looks Greek. Well, there is an explanation. All these cultural artifacts were produced by the same secret society. And I'm not talking about I don't imply a small society of a few hundred people. No, they already numbered in excess of 1 million, 3 million, perhaps 200 years ago already. They were capable of producing what did President Kennedy call it? A monolithic conspiracy, something unimaginably big.
Wow.
Pretty psychedelic at the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, it is.
Psychedelic, yes. Human imagination doesn't work without psychedelics. That's right, Graham.
So uniform. In the three different locations, you have the same imagery.
What could explain that? Jungian archetypes or a monolithic conspiracy?
And so the question that Wasson, Hoffman, and Ruck would immediately ask is, what is Triptolemus doing there? Was he really sent as a missionary to teach people how to farm? That's a traditional system.
Isn't that wheat in his hands?
That's exactly right.
Yes, he had to go around in his wheelchair to teach people how to farm. And he did that 2,000 years ago. Brian will argue that doesn't make much sense because our agriculture supposedly began not 2,000 years ago, but 12,000 years ago. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, no, agriculture did not exist more than 1,000 years ago, possibly much less than that. Humans were too smart before that. Agriculture is extremely energy intensive, much easier to live in a tropical rainforest managing a forest so that it produces fruit. Now that's the life. Sweating it out, pounding dust to eke out some grains of wheat. No, thank you. Only a slave-based culture could dream up that system. Well, I believe there's a little more at 128.30. Yeah. Ooh, got it.
in a very powerful way. And
It's because there has been a hugely well organized and well funded propaganda war against these substances. Our society prides itself on the alert, problem solving state of consciousness.
Two interesting statements. Let's review the first one, or I need to.
The war against these substances.
Well, there's some truth to that. Not just propaganda war, but the legislation against psychedelics. However, could that be an example of reverse psychology, the ruling class using reverse psychology to tempt people to use forbidden things? I think there's some evidence now that when you legalize cannabis, especially for medicinal use, it takes some of the fun out of smoking cannabis. So it's possible that fewer people use it recreationally once the elderly start using it medicinally. It's not cool anymore. Maybe. But I think a better explanation is the fact that too many psychedelics, things like cannabis, are easy to grow, and the pharmaceutical giants, they don't want people producing their own medicine. So that's the only reason there is a propaganda war against those drugs. No, our culture is certainly not against taking drugs. We're the most drugged people to ever walk the planet. They're just not Graham Hancock's preferred drugs. Antipsychotics, antidepressants. No, he wants the imaginary spiritual psychedelics. He also mentioned the problem-solving consciousness, reason, or the left side of the brain, and that nonsense.
Society prides itself on the alert, problem solving state of consciousness.
Yeah, and only psychedelics can save us from that. Well, I guess he calls it a state of imbalance. Psychedelics will somehow open the right side of your brain, the right hemisphere. Well, I just shake my head. We don't have a problem-solving consciousness at work in this world. We have a problem-making consciousness. And it is now busy making a new problem by arguing that psychedelics will solve the problems we are making. It's a comedy. Yeah. Magical thinking. Let's go ahead to 140.37. Another interesting slide provided by Brian will appear.
Whatever the wine was doing to people, this is what it was doing. So when you drank the wine of Dionysus, this is like that Colmos I showed you, that vase from Spain. This is not quite a Colmos, but it's another kind of ritual parade. This is also in the Louvre. If you head downstairs to the Salle des Caryatides, you'll see.
Brian had quite an interesting research period traveling around the world. This is an interesting and what should we call it? Frieze engraving on a bowl. I think he said
The Borghese vase from
a
480
vase.
BC, and before that, this is typically how an initiate of the Dionysian mysteries would be pictured. And the next one, Jamie. Right.
Ooh, he doesn't talk about this one, but that looks like a man hung after his execution to let his meat dry and cure.
Before that. So when they drank the wine of Dionysus, it wasn't to get drunk.
Which one?
Well, there we go. He will talk about this stick held by the man carrying the, well, they say intoxicated man. I say dead man. Apparently, this stick is called oh, how did I forget? Something strahl, wand.
Oh, I've never seen anyone walk up the middle aisle in Catholic Mass and walk away looking like that.
No, they were using something more powerful to really knock out a man. It's called the Thustral wand, according to Brian, and he's probably right. That's probably the name given to it. They claim, the scholars claim it's a hollow shaft, and this bulb on the end contains leaves, and the whole thing contains perhaps psychedelics. Sure, no. I have a better argument. I believe this ancestral wand is simply a truncheon, a baton, a billy club, and the end is a padded ball, so that when you strike your victim, it doesn't crack his, well, no, it doesn't crack his skull. It doesn't cause a wound, split his skin, just knocks him out, rattles his brain, unconscious, maybe dead. Anyway, that seems a bit more likely, no? Maybe not so pleasant.
Smashed though. It doesn't look like he's on mushrooms. He looks drunk.
He looks very smashed, indeed. There's the robe is making these little squiggles above his head, but also hinting that maybe his spirit is leaving him.
What's that thing on above his shoulder though? That looks like a mushroom.
So that's called a thyrsos, and the top part's called the narthex, cognate with narcotics. And Ruck thinks it's where they stuffed all the additives. It's where they stuffed all the toxins for the wine. And you often see the initiates of Dionysus carrying these, and you often see them over the head of the initiate.
Why over the head? Why not under the nose? If the point was to intoxicate someone with the contents of this thing, why not shove it in their mouths? No. Hung or just placed above their heads. The hint couldn't be much better.
They didn't go anywhere without their thyrsos wands.
And this wand, what was the top of it made out of?
Like
leaves. Yeah, well, it's a nice guess. There's no good visual evidence that real leaves comprise the head of this so-called wand. Let's proceed to 14642.
Well, there's no doubt that the ancient Egyptians were very focused on death, not in a negative way. They saw this life as our opportunity to prepare for the adventure and the challenge of death, that we had whatever years we got, 70, 90.
Amazing, amazing statements.
Life as our opportunity to prepare for the adventure and the challenge of death.
Life is an opportunity to prepare for the adventure of death. This is inverted thinking. Hmm. Death, I mean, the thought of death, if mastered, will prepare us for the adventure of life. Not vice versa. Life does not prepare you for something after death. There's no adventure, no nothing we can there's no provable adventure after death. But life is an adventure, and you increase your chances of failing it if you don't master your fear of death, the thought of death. Um, yeah, it's the ancient Egyptians, sure, they prepared for the journey after death. That is one of the myths we are given. How did they prepare? Besides taking psychedelics? No, apparently they did it by building giant pyramidal stone spaceships, right? That would help them journey somewhere. Apparently, young pharaohs um, devoted the second half of their life, 30, 40 years, to building their personal uh, crypts, aka pyramids. That makes total sense. Yes, young rulers of kingdoms would want to focus on their death and spend that, good 30 years from the age of 30 to 60 or even younger. I forgot what the time frames were for the pharaohs building their own crypts, but really, is that what rich and powerful people want to do with their time? In what fantasy world do we live? They weren't that different from us, if they existed, which pharaohs did not. Well, is this the last? One more, two more? Bear with me. 152, 22. Close enough.
Trying to argue the case for a lost civilization, that maybe I'm not right about everything, but we shouldn't neglect the hints and the clues, whether it comes from astronomy, whether it comes from geometry, whether it comes from geology, whether it comes from the statements of the age.
Yeah, the statements of forged classics and scriptures, a lost civilization. Well, I also believe in a quote unquote lost civilization. A perhaps better word is unknown civilization. Some who have a whiff of it call it Tartaria. I call it sometimes the aristocratic world that somehow disappeared, mostly around 200 years ago. Um, Sometimes I call it the world cannibal cult. It still exists and it has millions of members, but now they don't walk around in their aristocratic costumes. They mostly pretend to be like us. And maybe they're doing less cannibalism and more energy, energy stealing through banking and taxation and marketing, immigration, all these tricks that keep us poor and busy. 20750, something else worthy of reviewing. 207. Perfect.
Well, that was one of the more interesting things about, I believe it was University of Jerusalem, their take on what Moses in the burning bush was. That very likely the burning bush was the acacia tree, which is very rich in dimethyltryptamine.
DMT.
Yeah, and
True enough. And the acacia tree is, no, not acacia tree. Acacia wood is mentioned several times in the Bible. According to New American Standard Bible, it's mentioned 28 times. But again, not the acacia tree, only acacia wood.
that this was what I mean. When you say it that way, like, oh, of course, Moses, the burning bush, was God talking to him. And you think about the translation between ancient Hebrew.
Was God speaking to him because he was inhaling the tryptamine from the acacia, burning acacia bush? So getting high equates with meeting God. Curious. I like it. I like it. But no, that doesn't mean it works. It doesn't mean it's true. Um, it's a bush, the burning bush. The authors were not shy about using the word acacia, but they did not identify the burning bush as an acacia tree. So, yes, I don't think the argument works. It's a bush and it symbolizes all bushes, arguably all trees and small plants too. That's why it wasn't specifically identified, doesn't represent any specific species of plant. No, it's a symbol for all plants. And the burning of the bush hints at the destruction of forests. God, speaking from a burning bush, hints at the lost pagan belief that trees were also spirit-endowed beings. You burn it, and the spirit or God will talk and say, I am God. Please stop burning me. Yeah, well, these people don't care about trees and bushes. Only would like to smoke them all, I suppose. Potheads and... Ah, I must be more polite. Before, I mean, I will, what's the word? Admit that pot has medicinal value. Well, deforestation is an important part of the march of civilization, which is why Moses sees God in the burning bush while he is in a desert. I would suggest it represents a man-made desert. The anti-tree bias of the Bible is really unmistakable. It's fully exposed in my book, The Criminal Bible. And, well, we can see it from beginning to end. In the Garden of Eden, a fruit-bearing tree is the cause of the fall of man. So afterwards, man was expelled from that garden paradise and forced to toil in the fields in agriculture with wheat and, yes, that special fungus, ergot. Let's skip ahead again to 212:37. The burning bush, of course, we might also make a nice joke, a sexual joke. My burning bush. They missed that one. Too bad. Please bring me some water.
And finding its way around the world.
And that ancient fresco that shows Adam and Eve standing by mushrooms is very bizarre as well, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Again, our psychedelic heritage has been hidden from us, and that is
Our psychedelic heritage has been hidden from us. But that line of thinking again, that idea again, that mm, people, psychedelics and the Eleusinian tradition have been persecuted. They are victims, and it's time that we redeemed them, started practicing them again. No. I mean, really, one fresco with some mushrooms. Do these people think propaganda was invented in the 20th century? In the late 20th century? I think may have happened a little earlier than that. Um, Perhaps, well, I won't say how much earlier. Um, the Garden of Eden, well, if if the forbidden fruit is not a psychedelic plant that you're not allowed by God to consume, to inject, eat, or smoke, well, then it's just fruit, isn't it? And we're back to our native heritage, which was fruitarian mostly. Of course it was. There's no easier way to feed yourself with healthy food. Hmm? Granted, if, as the serpent claimed, eating that fruit would make us more like God, then that fruit symbolizes all the religions that convince people they are immortal, which is how religions attempt to generate fearlessness of death. But really, all religions fail to produce that sustainable feeling, that's mental fitness. It's just a feeling, a temporary illusion that doesn't stand the test of time, that doesn't work when death actually calls. Not for most. Maybe some are very, very skilled at convincing themselves that they are immortal and will go to heaven. But, well, mastering the fear of death is not only about the last moment in life, it's about becoming mentally super fit throughout your life, being able to think through any potential fear, keeping your head on your shoulders. Um, and so much of my work has been about doing that. My personal work, some 35 years ago, I meditated, some serious meditations, not this frivolous stuff that passes for meditation now. Um, anyway, I think that does it for this giant
is why I
podcast featuring Joe, Graham, and Brian. I'll be back to do more, no doubt. Well, it's possible I can't. Yes, it's always possible, but I'm not about to take myself out. No, things are good. I hope you can detect that from my delivery. Enough. Take care. Be well. Oh, I did forget something. I did. I did. How dare I? Well, I have mentioned my book a few times. Books a few times today, but friends tell me not to forget to share my contact and a little quick view of very brief summaries of my books and ordering information. Should you be inclined to support me